So, hello everybody. I'm Nina. We are with the series Digital Communication, and especially digital communication in medicine, which we relate to every other aspect of our activities because we are all human and we are somehow related to the health care in our lives. So we are happy to have Alex here today and Stan Bosch.
Pleasure to be here.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. I think 1 week ago on Saturday, we had a conversation. It's on YouTube. I have the link here. I just go briefly over it. It's time-stamped. We talked about disconnect on Google, search results and listings. And at some point, Alex was addressing the element of curating the listings, the option of having a filter. And last week, Google announced Rank Brain, which is actually maybe an answer. Would you accept that answer, Alex?
Yes, it's a very interesting option. And I believe that as we go forward, we will see the actual effect of using this. Because basically what it does is it goes offline and ranks results during downtime. It's a way of adjusting the results we will get in a future search by looking at history. And if they do it correctly, they will stratify health terms and enable a better, more precise search based on the health terms.
Yeah, there were also some news about transfer of positions, people going to Google. It seems like something is happening in your field.
Ultimately, people want information, and when it's related to their health and well-being, it is a strong motivator to go that way. And obviously, if Google can offer you information which is relevant to your health and well-being, there's a strong motivation to go that way and to search on that resource.
Yeah. Stan, what would you say about our last conversation? What was your takeaway?
Well, I think that you're talking about the one that we had concerning
communication disconnect on Google.
I think
the lack of professional knowledge how to use it.
I think that it's not possible in our lifetimes for them to come up with an algorithm that's going to emulate an actual person. So the ability to actually communicate, it's really kind of transferring back and forth right now where people are relying on the machines to communicate for them. But the truth is that they actually depending on the answers that the machines give them, which can be ultimately life-threatening for them. And that the algorithm, what they're going to try to do right now is a step in the right direction, but I don't think we'll ever see it in our lifetime, because what you're talking about is it's very much like the Matrix or any of those movies that are about, even Terminator, about the machines becoming, more artificial intelligence, AI stuff. And, I don't think that's ever going to really truly happen. I mean,
it depends upon.
If you look at it, the complexity of processing power has increased according to Moore's law, and we are getting closer to what has been termed the singularity, where the artificial intelligence capabilities will match those of the human brain, because ultimately, currently, technology is about the level of the mouse brain. So the possibilities of the technology at the current moment are at around the size of a mouse brain, and it is expected that in 5-6 years we will be at the level of a monkey brain. And who knows? I mean, in the very near future, we might achieve with quantum computing and nanocomputing, we might achieve the possibility technologically to equal or surpass the computing power of the human brain, and then it would be difficult to know what will happen. Ultimately, the big challenge will be that currently humans need to communicate between each other to form a network, and that communication channel, which is voice communication or visual communication, is relatively low bandwidth and slow. Can you imagine what would happen if we had computers with high processing power linking through high bandwidth networks? That means that the totality, the communication speed of the network will be much, much higher than we can ever achieve with our limited communication capabilities through voice and visual communication.
Just a second, because you are going very deep. And for our conversation, I read that my skin is new every month and my skeleton is new every 3 months. So we possibly don't know anything.
Yeah, but your knowledge is not new every 1 day or 1 month.
Yeah.
Your knowledge is a result of your life.
Let's go back to your lectures, because we have to.
Well, that's good, but I have a comment about that. Is that when you what I found interesting about what you were talking about as being the brain of a mouse and stuff like that. And what's really interesting is the conception, or I should say misconception, by us humans that computers are somehow smarter and that they work faster than us, when they actually don't. The only thing that they really have the ability to do is to recall specific information and quicker than we. Well, actually, that's not true. Not quicker than we can, but they can actually go to specific information based off the data that they get, and that data makes a decision about something based off algorithms that humans put in there to begin with, where we use something completely different. While when we're doing that human piece that says, well, I know this much about this, and the situation that I'm in right now, where a computer doesn't really take that into consideration. I need a coat because it's 50 degrees outside, but the computer says that you don't need a coat till it's 40. Right. So what are you going to do? You're going to put the coat on, or you're not going to put the coat on. It depends on that humans, where they're at. So
yeah, just precisely. Yes, I agree with you, Stan, and I was able to attend these modules Alex prepared for his students in the university, and it was fantastic that I could do that. So please, Alex, tell us about noise and dose of information and the United States standard, and how can we help ourselves not to break communication. We humans, and we run these machines and tools and technology. Yeah.
Ultimately, the key idea I had behind the modules I prepared for interpersonal communication in health is that communication is a very potent drug in itself. So if given in the appropriate dose, it can do a lot of good. If given inappropriately and not at the correct dose, it can actually harm, and sometimes harm a lot. So communication in healthcare is a treatment option, and people who are engaging into that treatment option should know the positives and the negatives of actually using it. So, for example, a physician, when they're using any drug or any treatment methodology, they know the indications, which means when it should be used, the contraindications, when they shouldn't be used, the mode of action, so how it works, and what they're expecting as an outcome. In communication, which is a very strong and very potent treatment option, not everybody knows the possible pluses, the side effects, and the mode of action. So when we use communication, we should be really, really cognizant, think about what we're achieving in healthcare. And without communication, we cannot achieve a lot in healthcare. It's not possible only through chemical or biological or surgical options to achieve the desired outcome. Sometimes it requires the addition or sometimes even the key element of the treatment is the communication. And within our very busy environment, we're getting more and more information out there, and it's adding to the noise, which is making the actual transfer of useful information more difficult, because people have to filter a lot of that information, the relevant from the irrelevant information. So when we have an overload of information like we are currently experiencing, we have zettabytes of information. That is an amount of information which would take normal CDs stacked one on top of the other from here to Mars. So imagine how many CDs a zettabyte is. It's an immense amount of information. The whole human history up to now has created less information than the human race has created in the last 2 years. So the noise out there is immense, and if we do not use it appropriately, we will be in a suboptimal place, especially in healthcare, where communication is a key treatment option.
That's why we started the clock now.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we on the circadians, we're working with scheduled time, because after a certain period, we just stop
Well,
working.
part of
Our minds block.
there's so many, the very discussion that you're talking about there about, you know, because a computer is not going to take into understand the concepts of just talking about the CDs. Okay, when you say that it's CDs that goes from here to Mars, right? Okay, the computer goes, okay, CDs, right? And accepts that as the answer, and it's done, right? Which is what people look at when they get a response from Google or anything else. They go, oh, that's the answer. That's it, you know. But for the most part, they're beginning to do that because they depend on those answers. But when you were talking about that, my brain went to, was he talking about DVDs or is he talking about CDs? Because DVDs, you know, hold 5 gig, right?
Yeah.
And so, which one are you talking about? So then your brain goes to, well, so is it only half the distance now? You know, so the distance doesn't seem as far, which goes into the very subject of over communication, over information, stuff that we let get in the way of being in what's happening right now, instead of something that happened, you know, or may not ever happen. So it's kind of interesting when you look at the whole thing. You know, there's so much work that's got to be done. If you look at the title, I'm pointing up that way because that's where the title is for me, but I think it's actually over there. But if you look at the title of the blab, right, it's break of communication, right? Well, in English, for break should have been spelled, if we're talking about a break, like you know, like a break in communication, we were communicating, now we're not, then it would be spelled BREAK, a break in communication. But because when I read that, I also realize, okay, there's another way to look at that the communication is coming to a stop, and that it's going to break, you know, just like brakes in a car, because that's what a brakes in the car does, is stop the car. So there's a lot of information that a computer doesn't have, or these databases don't have the ability to really ascertain exactly what they are, you know, what's that supposed to mean. And so when it comes into things like, you know, even the phrase heart attack, right? I can see how a database somewhere would consider that being like somebody attacked a heart, you know, like they took a knife or something and attacked it, versus what it actually really means. So there's so much work to be done in that, and because a human was the person that made determination about what attack meant, right? So it's really, this is I don't see it being solved in our lifetime. You know, I think that Moore's law, I'm very familiar with Moore's law, and I think that I think it's probably true that within the next 2 years we'll be at the level of maybe a monkey brain, maybe. But for the vast experiences of humans across the globe, please, you know, how you maybe one human, but the problem is you're looking for a solution for the human race, right? You're not looking for one for a individual, and yet you are. So it's very,
So thank you for asking about break, and sorry to interrupt you. I was just meaning to go over burnout, and I think when we have a burnout, the communication breaks. At least that was what I learned while being on these lectures in university there.
well, the point is that it works either way. A human can accept that, and a computer might not. If a computer looks at that and goes, huh, they just might not. It might not accept that for what it means. But for humans, we look at it and we go, it could mean a stop of communication because of stress, or it could mean a break of communication. Which are two different things. So it's not. I actually looked at the title and went, okay, well, that's actually very apropos. For the subject matter, it's very appropriate.
You didn't misunderstand about my dance break, which you are correct. It's just a 3 minutes time. It's not break. But I misspelled it, so thank you for...
You didn't misspell it. I actually thought this was a more correct way of saying it, because we obviously never stop communicating. We might not communicate in the right proportion or in the right way, but we don't stop communicating or receiving information. So it's just about slowing down of communication, which is braking, like you're pushing the brake on a car. And I would agree that, for example, burnout is a break, as in a stopping type of communication, because emotion gets into the way of the communication process, the treatment communication process, which should happen. And that's what happens with burnout. When the communication between the patient and the physician goes wrong in an emotional way, as in either the patient is overstressed or the physician is overstressed, the communication between them breaks down. It slows and becomes a different type of communication. Because communication, or one of the frameworks I use to explain communication, has a couple of dimensions, and I will try to explain the 4 dimensions of any communication, and I use an analogy of the human body. It has the skeleton, which is the framework. It has the muscles, which add dynamic to that framework. So we have structured communication, we have dynamic communication, and we also have the heart and the brain, so emotional communication and logical communication. So along these 4 axes, physicians should be able to address all 4 quadrants. So be structured, be dynamic, be logical, and be emotional. But when they get into a stressed situation or in burnout, they default to something which is only structured and logical. They give precise answers without adding a lot of emotion. And without emotion, sometimes we cannot connect appropriately to the person on the other side. So the dynamic that happens when we have burnout on the side of the physician, which is an emotional side effect of doing stressful work and highly emotional work, we tend to revert into doing just the facts without a lot of emotion, without adding any dynamic, which is a proactivity which our communication can add to that conversation.
That was very interesting. How do you know that you are on that burnout? How do you feel during that time?
Every time when you love Friday afternoon and you hate Monday morning, you're on that path.
Yeah, but some of us don't have a Friday or a Monday. There's nothing. Most of the people who are in the digital communication, which is what you're talking about, and you're talking about, increasing that digital communication. We're not on a Monday through Friday. We're on a 24 to 24. That's what it is. It's 365 days of the year, 7 days a week. There are no breaks, no matter what, because as we become connected globally, people in other countries, it's, that there's a song that says it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? Because the guy's going to take a drink. He's going to have a drink after work, right? So it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Yeah. And it's very true. And when you begin working, hi Annie, when you begin working in this arena, you don't have that. The problem with recognizing burnout is you don't have that break. Unless you force that break, you don't have that break of Saturday and Sunday, like what you're talking about for people who are not in that in that industry. Unfortunately, the medical industry is pretty much in the same position.
Exactly.
Because if somebody it's really interesting, and I agree with you on break that I thought, well, this is exactly what happens because it doesn't stop. It doesn't really stop, but anyway.
So
that was
you
just my
have
thoughts on
a
that
whole
too.
new field in all the professions, like medicine. Will start researching what's the human situation on the digital side. These people that are constantly involved on the software creation, programming, marketing.
Technology is an enabler. It's not the root. It is an enabler. It allows us to communicate more, better, faster. But if we have a problem in communication, technology might amplify that problem. So technology is just an enabler. It's not the reason.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mention these 6 steps that core for a good for solving a negative communication?
Yeah, the 6 steps were the so-called spikes. Is a 6-step algorithm for communicating bad news. For example, if a physician needs to give bad news to a patient who has a severe or incurable disease, there are 6 steps which should be followed. First, you need to define a situation where that communication can happen. It's very difficult to have that communication in a very noisy or an intrusive environment. You need to select the environment in which you want to make that communication. Then you need to understand how much the patient knows, and after that you need to understand how much the patient wants to know, because it's one thing how much he knows, another thing how much he wants to know, and then you should start the communication process. So the pre-planning of this communication is quite a significant part, because if you don't do it correctly, you will do more harm than good. If you communicate in an inappropriate place, an inappropriate manner, and with an inappropriate quality and quantity of information, the end result of that communication will be bad from healthcare perspective. The patient will not receive the benefit.
Yeah, I think it's, as I always do, I make analogies with the things I see around me and my work and my communication. Everything you say has its meaning in other fields.
Absolutely. Medicine is a part of human life. It's not something separate. It's just that people attribute more importance to it because it relates to their health and well-being.
Yeah, and we should maybe add some guidelines, how long our posting or blogs should be, what should be inside, how long we talk to other people. A lot of stuff.
Yeah, but stress comes from feeling the guilty feeling of not being able to fit somebody else's agenda within the framework of what you're talking about there. It's easy to say, we're going to work in 15-minute increments. It's much harder to do that because, for example, in the medical profession, your dog walks into the room. in the medical profession, they say they're going to go do a procedure, right? And that procedure is going to last 45 minutes. But for some reason, there is the patient may have some adverse effect, or the medication has an adverse effect on this patient, and all of a sudden the patient is put into a life-threatening situation. So is the doctor supposed to walk away from that? I mean, is he? He's not. So it's easy to pigeonhole and say these 15-minute and 25-minute and 30-minute increments, or 1 hour, or even 2 or 3 hour increments. But the facts are, you can't always do that. And so the stress comes from, part of it is from these checklists that are made by companies that say this job should take 2.5 hours to stock this shelf in this store. But that doesn't take into account that guy that's stocking it may have to answer a question from somebody, because you don't have enough help in there. That was our 15-minute clock. So, you don't have enough help in the store to be able to service the customers. So what is the guy supposed to do? Hey, Van, we're talking about the Van Sliger has joined us, and Van is a guy that we've met. We met actually on the Good Morning Blab, and he's like a funny humor guy, jokes and stuff like that. He's a good guy. I've watched him on a couple of things, but it's we're talking about how computers and people are going to have to make some adjustments to get real good information out of Google in the future versus some of what we get right now, because it's based off of, a lot of times it's based off popularity of the response. So I look up something that says, I cut my finger and it's turned green, and if the more popular thing says, oh, well, then you have the mumps, then all of a sudden I go to the doctor and say, I have the mumps. That was our original conversation when we first began talking about this. Of course, that algorithm has changed somewhat now too. So that was what we talked about in the first hangout. But
yeah.
Anyway, this conversation could literally never end.
Yeah.
You could have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week open forum for people to come in and say, really, what does this mean? And that's why I don't think digitally. I don't think we're going to we're going to solve this issue digitally. I don't think. I think there will be some strides moved towards it, but there's going to be some really bad stuff that comes out of it too.
I just put the link to Alex's profile on Google Plus.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow him there. He's also on LinkedIn.
Have you ever read the book, The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you ever read it, Nina?
No.
So
maybe you tell me in Bulgarian.
Right?
I don't know what the story.
Well, there's a story in it. If you want to tell the story, Alex, about the plane?
Yeah, well, you can do it.
Well, basically, there was the airlines. They tracked it down to an airplane that crashed into the side of the mountain because the navigator he was looking at the instruments that said that they were flying above the mountain range, right? But they were not, and so they flew right straight into the mountain because the pilots were saying the mountain is here, right? So, but they didn't do anything because the instrument said, you're okay. So they relied on the digital information that they were getting rather than what they were seeing right in front of their face. That book's probably 15, 20 years old now, Alex?
I think it's about 20 years old.
Yeah. The Inmates Are Running the Asylum. You can probably get it for 99 cents or something like that over on Amazon or trade for it or something. But it was, the reason I bought it was the reason that digital is not always the answer, is because the very title of it, a computer's not going to come up with that title,
Alex, what would you advise us to check for our burnout when we are here as dancers all the time?
Burnout is an emotional condition, and a solution is actually getting the internal voices down, which is kind of a little bit of Chinese or Indian medicine, which is called meditation. Meditation is about getting the inner voices down and focusing on the important things. So trying to reduce the noise and the chatter in the environment and focus on the important things. So that's where I see the blend between traditional Western medicine and the Eastern medicine. Most of that is in the communication space, both externally and more importantly, internally within our head. Because if we can get the noise level down, we will start to understand what the important elements are. Because
that's good. I have all notifications down, and in my mail there's only the stan voice.
I do have one request from you, Alex. Is if you would tell Van, who is watching now, but for the sake of the actual recording, tell who you are and because it's one thing to put a link that says this is exactly what the digital stuff is. It's one thing to put a link there that says go read this, and it's a completely different thing that says this is who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
So can you give a little of that insight for Van, because he's probably going to find something to make some jokes about, since he's kind of a stand-up comedian too, I think. If I'm right.
Would you like to join us? You can open seat. Okay. Sorry,
Well,
Alex, go.
So tell them who you are.
I'm a human being, basically, first and foremost. And then I trained as a physician some 30-something years ago. Since then, I've always tried to help people. And the way I found helping initially was on a one-to-one conversation, being a physician and practicing medicine on a one-to-one basis. And then I saw that through communication in a one-to-many setting, I could actually improve healthcare to a similar, if not greater extent. So I started becoming involved in more mass communication. And because digital was going that way, I started looking into the digital ways of communicating within healthcare. Because I still believe that healthcare requires communication first and foremost before everything else that happens within it. And a miscommunication at that level cannot lead to a good result, irrespective of how good medicines or surgical procedures or technology you have. The way to use it correctly is through communication, both in learning how to use it and also in applying it. Because ultimately, for example, if you have a patient at the end of his life, you cannot prolong life, but you can increase the quality of that remaining part of that life. So you can help every time. And sometimes helping is actually asking, what do you want to achieve in the remaining 1 month of your life? And then trying to achieve that. So communication is critical in healthcare, and it is a very much underappreciated element. And I can say that Van probably has a lot of good things he can add to that conversation, because humor is one of the positive emotions which helps communication. It's kind of like the oil for the cogwheels. It makes communication more fluid and easier.
Yeah, you you remind me of the when you say humor, the thing about telling somebody what do you want to achieve with the last week of last month of your life and stuff like that, was that there was that joke about the guy that went to the doctor and then he went back for his checkup, and the doctor said, the joke about the one, I'm going to give you the good news first and the bad news, and the news was that you've only got 1 week to live, and the bad news was I should have told you that last week. so that's like that's a humor thing, and that was actually told. I actually heard that that being told by the guy that wrote the book when he had what do you call it, cancer of the he had prostate cancer, which is your done deal, right?
Especially for men.
Yes. But this guy used his last year. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. He used the last year. He knew that it was coming, so he spent that last year creating the story for his 3 kids, to make sure that they got all the information about him and everything. He wrote a book. It was on a lot of tours and national stuff. It was a good story, but he knew that. So it was like, he wasn't, I wouldn't say he was in the book. He talks about, he wasn't resigned to his condition. It was just part of what his life was. And so, he made the best of what he was given. But
there's a very interesting film on that. It's called The Bucket List with Morgan Freeman and Robert De Niro. It's a great film. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not Robert De Niro. It's, oh gosh, what's his name? He's, Jack
Nicholson.
What is his name? Yeah, it's Nicholson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, he's the guy. He was the one that was sick, and he drank the coffee from the monkey stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end, Freeman was putting his no, it wasn't Freeman. It was his assistant was putting his stuff in that can that was on top of the mountain or something like that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex, tell us what you're about and when do we meet again, and I'll make an announcement and stop recording, then we can continue blabbing.
So
What's your up to New Year program?
up to New Year, I have a couple of lectures which I will be doing on the future of the physician. So the future type of physician, because I believe that form follows function. So the way the physician will evolve in the coming years will be according to the needs of the system. And I'll be doing that. Apart from that, I will just continue to do my day job and try to be as helpful as possible in what I do.
Thank you. So Alex is in Toronto currently. I'm in Europe, Sofia, Bulgaria, and Stan Bush is in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. That's very interesting, and it's Saturday. I couldn't find a good hashtag for our conversation. It's only with cats. So maybe I stop the recording and we continue. Just to announce that from Monday we are launching a private community, Global Circadian. We will be happy to assist the communication gap for every professional in a private space, because we believe that it's the better way to work, to have all the technologies suitable for the professionals, help them work faster, easier, more accurate, and improve their life, their communication with their friends. It's a global world, and most of the people use it even for, like me, I talk to my daughter only online.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard from her a week, and I'm looking for signs on the devices. So I spend a lot of time also, since she's gone, it's 8 years, and maybe everything I learn, I don't go to burnout. I want to start delivering to people what I know. And thankfully, Stan Bush is with me, supporting me with all his powers.
I don't know so much about that because
Super
burnout's across the board. The seat is closed. Van actually came back because he wanted to join a little bit in the conversation.
Okay.
And
I will open.
But if you wanted to, are you going to stop recording? Or are you going to keep going with the seat? What's going on with that?
I don't know.
It keeps opening and closing.
It's not opening.
There he is.
Okay.
Yeah, he came into a blab. I think it was his first day on, maybe, gosh, a month ago or so.
Hi, Van.
Hey, how are you?
Good. You know, since we're talking about burnout and digital communication, and we even talked about the end times for a person's life, there's a lot of humor wrapped up in that.
Yeah, one of the funniest things that I'd ever saw. It was actually he was a good friend of mine. He was the funniest person I'd ever met in my life, and me and him would meet up, and we would laugh so hard that it was like you did sit-ups the day before. I mean, your stomach would. And if I could tell you a little quick story about this guy, he had 2 names, and anybody you meet has 2 names, they're going to be sensational. And he went by Roscoe and he went by George, and he developed liver cancer. But before he did that, he invited me to his hometown, and we were driving down the road, and he said, Van, he said, he said, could you eat? Are you hungry? And I said, well, yeah, I'd like to get something to eat. So we pull up at somebody's house, and you could look through the screen door, and they were actually putting their food back up. They just finished eating themselves. And he said, hey, could you get this back out? He said, this is my friend Van. He's really wanting to eat. He's really hungry. And I'm just assuming that he knows the people, right? I'm talking about a guy walked in a total stranger's house. We eat. And I said, those people were very nice to have us in there. And he didn't even know them. And I like to nearly crawl under the table, but he was just that kind of person. So on his deathbed, he was the one who actually challenged me to do comedy, because I thought he was the funniest person I ever met. He felt the same about me. But it was really, when we got together, it was chemistry. Mm-hmm. And so I'm talking in the middle of his living room floor now. His bed's there. He's jaundiced. He's ready to go in about 3 more days. And he had this aunt that when she talked to him, she would get right over him and go, George, is there anything I can do for you? And he summons for her to come closer, come closer, come closer. And when she got right there to his face, he said, "I'm not deaf. I'm dying, but I'm not deaf." So, and my life has been a collection of those type of stories, having been in ministry. What God's doing in my life is just a spectacular thing of, I'm using honeybees. Actually, it's a program called Unbelievable. There's a link for it probably there in my profile. I'm doing a lot more work to the website, but chances are I'm going to be going into every Tennessee state prison. And I've went to a lot of homes where people are having substance abuse. And it's just a message of hope and encouragement of showing what you can do by the way the honeybees get it done. And your average person doesn't know the magnitude of what they do and how they work together. For instance, it takes 10 million trips to make just a pint of honey. So when you start breaking down what they do and you use humor in that, I would not almost want to live if you could not find humor in something. I think it's all around us. And I think that is one of the things, and I will promise you, you will not be laughing and depressed at the same time. Those two behaviors can't coexist. And the Bible says that a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. And so all the medicines we try to make are already really there in certain cases. I mean, if you're trying to take a mood elevator, well, if you're already laughing, you're already there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's
which was exactly,
and I think,
which was exactly the point I was trying to
Would
make.
you agree,
Communication
humor
is,
like a medicine?
communication is a medicine in itself. So actually speaking in an appropriate way, especially with humor, is the way forward for many conditions we can treat. And it's not an alternative to classical medicine. It's just one more option, which is a necessary option. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just going to ask about how the humor would affect the burnout thing. You know, it's a
treatment for burnout. Humor is a treatment for many conditions, including very much for burnout, because burnout is an emotional element. So people who have burnouts are emotionally closed, and humor can actually bring them back out of their shell.
Yeah, I don't think I suffer. You know, I work a tremendous amount of hours, but I do recognize when I am burnout, I think, but I don't suffer burnout as much as a lot of people that I know, because I mean, I really laugh a lot because it's me. I look at me and go, you know, I mean, like really, that's what you thought? Cool.
Yeah. If you learn to laugh at yourself, you have an unending supply of material.
Mm-hmm. Well, your story reminded me of, there was just a recent passing here, and they had all gotten together because the patriarch of the family, she was dying, and so everybody came there and was surrounded. You know, they were all around her just through the whole thing, and the priest had already come in and done everything, and it looked like that she started getting better, and she said, "Well, I sure hope this happens tonight, because I don't want to do all this again tomorrow."
Yeah.
It was really, you know, it shows that is still there for a lot of people. You know, that's probably why she was 95 when it happened. You know, because she had that kind of a mindset on stuff, but she said she didn't want to go through all that again tomorrow. So
yeah, I can see how that would play in. It's but you're talking about burnout, and when you're dealing with people, of course I do that. I'm a pastor, and if you don't take certain things as a grain of salt at times, and you're not going to make that journey.
Absolutely.
I don't believe, I've done a lot of things, but I've never seen where burnout could happen quicker. And the reason why is you're constantly dealing with humanity, and humanity is a stressor just because. But I mean, that's the world we live in. You have to deal with humanity. But I don't know. I'm just always been, a guy asked me one time, he said, "You're just such an optimist." And I said, "Really, I'm not," because I read a quote one time that said, It said, "Dear pessimist, dear optimist, arguing over glass being half full and half empty. I came up and drank it. Signed, the opportunist." And so I think life is what you make out of it. You know, a lot. It's going to have a lot to do with it. Your attitude. I'll take attitude and desire over any other key component, because I believe those are the things that make a difference. And without them, you're really not going to go anywhere fast. And I think you'll just kind of wind up beating your head against the wall.
Nice to meet you, Van. I'm be laughing all the time.
Oh, yeah.
That makes me feel good, because sometimes everybody is very serious and just me laughing.
Right. I see.
But I cannot change my nature, so I'm nice that I meet a person like you.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's amazing. People want to be around people that have joy. I think joy is contagious. I also think that depression can be. If you're around a bunch of down people and they never want to go forward, it's and I feel like, you know, kind of God put me on the planet to do that. I have a picture when I was 2 years old. My great grandmother was bedridden, and I would bring and do my animal show. I mean, I know God put me on this earth to be an entertainer, but I'm an entertainer that, you know, preaches the word of God and that reaches people one-on-one. I've been waiting for blab all my life. You know, I've been waiting for something like this and it's just, and I can go back to where I was 2 years of age. I'm 45 now. And I was doing that then because I always love to see people smile, because it sure beat the alternative. And I think it's just something that you bring to the table. You know, it's, and I think some of it's a gift, some of it's learned behavior. But if you can convey what you're wanting to say with humor, people never forget it.
Which is really interesting when you're talking about the medical field, because when people are searching for things in our first blab, Alex pointed out the fact that when people are searching for, you know, like, I've got this cut on my finger, the first thing they really look for is that this is a bad, really, they look for the worst news.
Yeah,
they don't look for, they don't click on the thing that says, oh, by the way, that's a paper cut. They don't look at that. They look at the thing that says, you know, the world as you know it's going to change, right? That's what they look for, is that this thing that says they're going to have their finger cut off. And so that use the search results. Hey, we're going back on topic. We're going back on topic.
Yes, I want to close the conversation with the question, can humor be like active meditation against burnout, Alex?
Absolutely. The problem is that the burnout component in the physician-patient communication affects the physician. So he's supposed to be curing the conversation, but what's actually happening is he's the one that needs the medicine. And the patient usually comes with the complaint. He doesn't come with something funny. It's very rare that a patient will come in and make the physician laugh. So because of the negative communication between a patient and a physician, physicians are especially exposed to burnout, because all they get is negative communication. Oh, doctor, I have a pain. Oh, help me, and I can't be helped. And a lot of negative communication. And it takes really very, very strong and tenacious people to be to remain with a positive attitude when 8 hours of your 8-hour workday is communicating with people who are complaining. Yeah.
Good. That we have a category on the circadians that says humor. And I will suggest from Monday, when we open the private community, we start filling content into that category and inviting Van also to contribute to our humor, because in this way you will be more useful to the people that are coming to us.
Yeah, help you reach more people. But I'm going to address that. I'm sure Vans has something to say about that too. But I can tell you this, that I think what is going to happen in all this communication, because I've been waiting. You're not the only one's been waiting for blab, right? I think the entire world's been waiting for something very similar to this, and that there are no professions, unfortunately, now. There are no professions where the majority of their day is spent in happiness. I mean, you know, that's all I ever hear is that, hey, this didn't work. This doesn't work. Can you help me fix this? This doesn't work, because I'm in technology, right? It's like, I didn't get that email. And you look and you go, well, you start looking at it and go, what, you blocked them. You know, like Nina in the beginning, right? She blocked us, right? So we couldn't join. We couldn't join because she blocked us. And so you know, but being able to smile and laugh about that versus being, you know, all beat up about it. I beat up myself on a different level. This stuff doesn't bother me as much as like the personal stuff. So anyway, that you're going to see that the professions, all professions have that. Everybody. That's just the world that we're moving into, and there's got to be a way to get around that somehow or change it somewhat.
Okay, let's say bye and stop broadcasting, and we can stay a bit longer. See you next Saturday, or maybe in a week time. We will do it a bit earlier.
Okay.
The announcement.